Where to begin? I'm 31 years old now. I was born in the United States, in Kentucky, Louisville, to be precise, um, 31 years ago. So from surrogacy, from a surrogate mother, and I was born from what we call traditional surrogacy. Traditional surrogacy is that there was no egg donor. The egg came from my surrogate mother. So in my case, my surrogate mother is my birth mother, is my biological mother. Um, I grew up between France and the United States, and I've always had that feeling that something was off about my birth, because my parents never told me about the fact that I was born from surrogacy. They've always um, hidden it from me. And but I always knew inside of me that something was off. And later on in life, I kind of did my research, and I found out that in Louisville, in 1991, surrogacy was, it was a practice that was always that was um, commonly done. And then I realized that I was most certainly born from a surrogate. And then I met my husband, Matthias, 10 years ago. And I talked with my mother-in-law actually a lot about all of this, all of my issues, my psychological issues, my issues with like just life. And I told her that I was born from a surrogate mother and that I was sure of it, but I had no proof of it. And what she did is that she bought me a DNA kit test for my 30th birthday, and that's when I actually found out. That's when I had like the real proof that I was born from a surrogate mother. As I in my I mean When you take the DNA test, you can see that you have like whatever ethnic background, but you also have DNA matches, and I was matched with my cousin and my uncle.
Okay. With that background, um, also, so you never managed to ask your parents when you were feeling this way, kind of like to ask them when you were feeling this thing that you didn't feel good, or try
No,
talking to
I
them.
never asked. I never asked, and I felt like I wasn't allowed to ask. I kind of
Okay.
grew up in this environment where that was a question that could not be asked. They never told me, okay, Olivia, you're not allowed to talk about it.
Hmm.
But I grew up in an environment where I understood that I wasn't allowed to talk about it. So I just shut my mouth as a nice little young child that I was, naive, and I didn't say anything. I never said anything, ever.
Okay. So your parents don't, do they know actually now that you know once you got the DNA test? Did you
Yes,
talk to
they
your
do know.
parents?
I
Okay.
didn't talk to my parents actually. Um, I kind of, my story is very long, but I kind of threw a fit at them, and I told them that I knew something was off
Hmm.
before taking the DNA test. Because they had, they had done something completely mean and horrible to me. So I threw a fit at them, and during our argument, I told them, okay, I know something's off. You've just been withholding this from me for so long, and I'm sick of it. And we stopped talking for a while. They brushed off the question. They never came back to it. And then after I took the DNA test and I had proof, it was my husband that went and saw my parents and that actually told them that I knew, with proof. And so after that, my mother sat me down, and without anyone around us, she sat me down, just her and I. And she told me, she was like, okay, well, you know what? You're not my daughter. I'm not your mother. This is how it went. Sorry. And then we stopped talking and we went on with life. It was kind of harsh, but that's just how we communicate, and um, that's how our relationship was. We don't talk to each other very much. We don't share a lot of emotions. But that's how she was brought up as well. So it's not her fault. It's just how she is. Um, but yeah, we've always had a quite complicated relationship.
Okay, so knowing about this after you knew, do you think that changed for you? That all the questions you had about yourself and now knowing, did it change in some way for you? Did you feel different? Was that the impulse for you to start talking about surrogacy, opening yourself up a little bit more?
It didn't it didn't shock me because I always knew, like I said, it was always in me. I always had that just in my mind. It was implemented in my mind that I was born from surrogacy, and I have my best friend that can testify for me. I have people around me that just always heard me talk about surrogacy and how I was born from a surrogate mother. So it didn't really shock me. It didn't change anything in my life because I mean it didn't answer questions. The only thing that it answered was my ethnic background, which I found quite interesting because I have some Norwegian blood, I have some Lithuanian blood, whatever. That part was quite that was really interesting actually. But what shocked me and what changed the most was that I found a family. My biological mother's side is incredible. My biological mother is someone who's quite mentally unstable. So I don't really have a relationship with her, but I did get to find a half brother, three half sisters, and a whole family that's willing to take me in and I mean take me in as theirs, even if they haven't known me for the last 31 years. So that was that's like the best present I could ever have had in my entire lifetime. Um, I started talking about surrogacy and the fact that I was against surrogacy on TikTok because it was therapeutical for me. I needed it it's kind of like a journal, you know, instead of writing, I talk, and talking about my story and my side of the story and how I find every aspect of surrogacy negative is soothing for me and my soul. And I also jumped to talking about it because I have proof now. No one can say that I'm not born from surrogacy because I literally have DNA proof. And that's, yeah, that's that.
Thing. And when you started sharing like your views against surrogacy on TikTok, did you face like any challenges or receive any threats for expressing your opinions?
I didn't receive any threats. A lot of people didn't really understand where I came from in the beginning, but more as I talk on TikTok, the more I express my feelings and I demonstrate like real case scenarios where surrogacy just goes wrong, the more people are open to the fact that surrogacy is a bad choice, is not possible, and should be abolished. So I'm kind of educating people via TikTok. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm a humble person, I swear. It's just I feel like people don't know enough about surrogacy. They need to be educated. That's like it's so important to educate people on surrogacy. People just think that it's a beautiful little like butterfly world where everything goes right and that love is sufficient and that the child will grow up and everything will be fine. But no, no, not everything will be fine. We're using wombs. We're paying for women's uteruses. We're buying children. I mean, there's nothing right with surrogacy. And yeah, the more I talk, the more people are like, oh, okay, well, I'm actually against it now. And that's the best feeling in the world, having changed just a few minds and giving another perspective on surrogacy.
At the end, it's your story to tell.
Exactly.
And for this also in the TikTok, because it's the social media where you express more of your stories, and like you said, you use it as your journal. Have you had the approach of other surrogate children or mothers talk to you and like identify with you, or like you've heard other testimonies from other people?
I haven't had any other testimonies of surrogate children, which is really sad for me. But then again, I understand because I had the chance of taking that DNA test and being matched with people from my family. I'm sure that's not the case of a lot of people that were born 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, lying about it was a lot easier because, I mean, surrogacy wasn't, I mean, it was legal, but it wasn't really talked about. And I mean, I could have gone through my life with the lie because on my birth certificate, my real birth certificate was sealed at my birth. So with my real biological mother, who was my surrogate, that was sealed at like at my birth, and then my intended parent was put on my birth certificate. There's nowhere in that birth certificate where it's written that I was born from surrogacy or whatever. So I guess a lot of children born from surrogacy will never know. They'll just be, they'll just have that instinct, or they'll be a little bit, sorry for the word, but a little bit screwed up. They'll grow up with mental problems. They'll grow up with problems, and that's really sad. Um, but however, did have I do have intended parents that talk to me that regret uh, going through surrogacy. And I do have, unfortunately, I do have surrogate mothers that confided in the fact that they are on the border of suicide because they did surrogacy. So they told me their life story, and it's really shocking. And I'm trying to help them as much as I can. But they confided in me. They told me their stories, and I swear to you, it's heartbreaking. It's horrible. I think of this one mother who is in France, and she was used as a surrogate, and her little girl is 11 months old now, and she's battling to not commit suicide. I'm going to cry, I think, but because her story is horrible. Um, she's battling to not commit suicide because she gave her child, and she feels guilty, she feels bad, she feels sad, she feels like she's been used because she did this for a couple of friends, and this couple of friends don't even ask if she's okay, like she's alone. No one cares about her. No one even asks if she feels okay. So she gets a couple of pictures of her little girl from time to time, but she's alone. She's freaking alone. And yeah, she's borderline suicidal. And I'm trying to tell her that she has to be strong because maybe one day her daughter will want to talk to her mother and will want to hear her side of the story. Um, but that story killed me. It killed me. And I'm sure a lot of surrogate mothers feel this way. It's just a lot of surrogate mothers don't feel confident enough um, of speaking out. And I hope with my TikTok, more surrogate mothers will come to me and talk to me, and more intended parents as well will come to me and express their why they're against surrogacy now.
That's true. I was just going to mention that I think you are helping people to, especially women, children, to raise their voice, to talk to you, to also share their stories. Like you said, it's something that need to be teach that people to understand. And what you're doing on TikTok is amazing. Actually, it's helping a lot of women, I guess, to open up and talk. And at one point, even have other accounts of TikToks, other blogs to share all these testimonies about what's happening with the subject of surrogacy actually.
Yeah, I hope one day I could even open an association of like just to help these people, just to be there for them because they're not alone. They feel alone, and I understand that they feel alone because it's horrible, because surrogacy just it screws up children, but it also screws up these poor mothers that are sometimes forced into surrogacy, that sometimes don't even have the choice to be a surrogate mother because they have bills to pay, and being a surrogate is the only way out, which is the case of my biological mother, I thoroughly believe. So yeah, I don't even understand sometimes why surrogacy exists, to be honest.
That's true. Now that you mentioned this about your biological mother, did you ask her why she did this, or it's just some intuition that you have and you never actually talked to your biological mother?
My biological mother, yes, I asked her why she did it. She unfortunately lost a child not
Okay.
too long before I was conceived, um, from a dramatic event. Uh, I won't be getting into details, but it was really, really, really bad. Um, and I think she felt guilty because of it. And then she just wanted to donate her body to a family that couldn't have a child, and yeah, and she felt like she had to repay life in that way. Uh, that's how she put it. Um, but then again, there she also had four children to nourish. She didn't really have a stable job, so life wasn't easy on her either. Surrogacy is a good way out, financially speaking, for a lot of women in the United States.
That's true. And with all this also, what do you think are some important like ethical concerns or risks about surrogacy that you think everyone should know about?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
That what are some important like ethical concerns or risks about surrogacy that you think everyone should know about?
Well, I mean, first of all, women that are in situations like maybe my birth mother where they're mentally just not stable. I mean, we're using women that are sometimes in financial situations that are very complicated, um, to have them have a baby. I mean, that it's ethically, I mean, ethically speaking, that's just horrible. Um, and I think we're just forgetting about all the physic I mean the psychological aspect of what the children will have to bear throughout its life. Um, it's not ethical to take away a baby, a newborn, from its mother. I think that's my main concern today, as well as paying to use a human body to have a baby, which is, I mean, that's the most that's absolutely disgusting. But we're also buying babies, which ethically speaking is just terrible. And on top of that, we're taking away newborns from their mothers that, I mean, that had them in their tummies for 9 months, um, and we're giving them away to another family. So the entire thing is non-ethical, even when it's not paid, like in Canada, for example. It's not ethical. It'll never be ethical. There's nothing ethical in surrogacy. And I just want to talk about Canada for a second, but
Sure.
they do have, I mean, I read a bit of laws on Canada. They haven't up until $22,000 that are reimbursed for the surrogacy. So there is money in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not as much as in the US, but there is a little bit of money that's between the surrogate and the intended parents or the agency, whatever. Um, so that it'll never be ethical, ever, ever, ever. We're treating with humans. We're selling humans. We're buying uteruses. This is just, it's too much, and it should be
Yeah,
abolished worldwide.
definitely. Yes. Um, with this subject also about the families, how do you respond actually to people who think surrogacy is a good option, like for their families that can't have children on their own?
It was the case of my family 30 years ago, and the problem is not if it's a good option or not. It's the question is that why is it an option today? Why are we making it an option? These people are just they're I mean they're infertile. They're I kind of, I feel bad for them. They're infertile. They have to treat themselves because it's, I mean, it's how do you say deuil? It's kind of like forget the word in English. I'm sorry, but they have to mourn the fact that they're infertile, and and so well they turn towards surrogacy because it's there. It's an option, and it shouldn't be an option. The problem isn't the people that are turning towards surrogacy, it's the fact that surrogacy is out there and it is an option for me.
Yes.
That's why um I don't hate my parents. That's why I don't blame them. I'll never blame them for using surrogacy because it was just an option that they took um when they thought they didn't have the choice. But if it wasn't there, they wouldn't have gotten through surrogacy and they just wouldn't have had children or they would have adopted.
Of course. So
But
that's the
surrogacy was there.
true. So the option that you would give people would be to adopt children and give them
Yeah,
actually a house. So there's so many children around the world that could be adopted and that
there's
need a home.
so many children willing to have a home, to have a happy life, to have a mom and dad that love them. And don't get me wrong, there is trafficking in adoption as well throughout the world. Adoption isn't just perfect, as a lot of people say as well. There's a lot of bad things going on with adoption, but adoption is just it's necessary. It's human wise, it's just we have to have adoption. We have to get these children out of places that are terrible and try to give them a better house. Um, However, surrogacy isn't a necessity. Absolutely not. It'll never be a necessity. We're 7 billion people on this earth. We don't need to go on and buy wombs and create babies and buy babies. It's just ridiculous.
Exactly. And so what advice can you have for people who are thinking about surrogacy but also wants to understand like the concerns that you have? Like somebody that approaches you and they're thinking about that option, but they hear your story, they're not concerned. So like what advice can you give them?
Like they want to go through surrogacy? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like that's their first option. That's what they want to do, but they see your TikTok, see like the consequences, that's a horrible thing, but they want to hear maybe your side of the story. Like what advice would you give them for them not to go through the process of surrogacy?
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I think people just don't wrap that love isn't sufficient. That the love that they're going to give to this child won't be sufficient. We're always, as a child that's born from surrogacy, we're always going to try and find the other half of ourselves, always. And there's always going to be trouble, mental problems, or problems like during adolescence. There's always going to be some issues because of surrogacy as a child born from it. So love isn't sufficient. It'll never be sufficient. Uh, Unfortunately, it would be too easy. Um, and then there is adoption. There are plenty of newborns that need to be adopted. There are plenty of young children that need to be loved. There's so many children, and that maybe try and think about adoption first. And yeah, that's what I would give as advice.
Okay, thank you.
And I think it's really important also to remind people that what surrogacy really is. People, it's buying a, like, paying for a womb, paying for a woman's body, buying a baby, like literally buying a human being. We're forgetting what it really is and what it really means. So I think we really need to remind people this all the time. And if I have to do it every single day for the rest of my life, I will be doing it, because people just forget about it. Because in the media, people show surrogacy as this perfect thing where everything's fine, and surrogate moms are happy, and surrogate babies are happy, and intended parents are just so happy as well. But we forget what surrogacy is at the base. Having a child is not a right. That's how I answer it. It's not a right. It's not because you're infertile that you have to have a child. It's not because you're homosexual that you have to have a child. It's not a right. It's not a given right for you to have a child. So, it just doesn't work. Unfortunately for them and for infertile couples, surrogacy shouldn't even be an option. It's just as it is. I don't know how to put it in any other words, but yeah, a child isn't a right. There is no right to children. Children have rights, but we have no right to children ever. And the second question was the psychological aspects of like what traumatized me.
I guess.
Yeah, the fact that I was abandoned traumatized me the most. For me, I, I lived it as an abandonment, um, and I feel as if I was abandoned by my birth mother, as I was sold. There's nothing worse for a child to feel that way, to feel that at one moment in my life I was literally sold for a check. Um, so it screwed me up very badly. I have always had very complicated relationships with women in general, especially older women, because I've always searched the mother in these women. I've also had problems with my other relationships because I was scared to be abandoned and to be rejected. So I kind of smothered people, like my friends. I always smothered them. I always kept them within my reach. I suffocated them, and they eventually left. So I was alone a lot of the time. And then recently I was diagnosed with a bipolar disorder. So I do thoroughly believe that that trauma led to having a, a literal mental issue out of it. Um, and yeah, that's my psychological issues as of today. I've had a hard life. I've been Things haven't been easy for me. I it's been difficult. That's all I can say. Sorry, with a lot of emotions. But it's been difficult. It's been a hard ride. Um, and yeah, so that's why I need to talk about it, and I need also for people to understand that uh, how surrogacy can affect children, how being abandoned at birth can can destroy you, how being exchanged for a check can destroy you as well. And all my life I've thought that I wasn't enough for people, because apparently I wasn't enough at birth for my mother to keep me, and money was more important for her than me. So yeah, that's how it screwed me up.
What would you compare your experience with one of an adopted child?
We have the same problem with being abandoned, the same issues growing up, I suppose, with being abandoned. Um, However, I guess with a child that's been abandoned and then adopted, we're trying to give him a better life. I mean, like I said, it's a human necessity to have adoption. So we're trying to give him a better life. We're trying to make his life better. We're trying to, get him out of a horrible situation to offer him a better life. Surrogacy, it's not really that. We're just signing a contract and buying a child, and hopefully it works out. Um, it's not the same situation. However, the feelings could be the same. That sentiment of abandonment is the same in abandoned children, of course. And I guess we both look for who we are throughout the time. Like abandoned children sometimes need to go back to the country they were born in, or they need to see I don't know, whatever. They need to go find their moms. Um, so we share that feeling as well. But in my case, it was hidden. In children that have been abandoned and then adopted, it's easier to tell them. Uh, People usually don't lie when they adopt children. People lie a lot when they do go through surrogacy. They do lie a lot to their children. So I guess that's the differences I see between us.